Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. Last week, we had a little bit of a touch and go schedule for these briefings, but we're back in full force this week. General Avivi and myself are back in Israel, ready to share with you all that is happening. General, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great, Leah. Thank you, Moshe.
So, the big news we really should start with is the gunfire that's been heard in the Negev and these two Israeli towns that Ben Gvir visited. What can you share with us about that?
So we heard that last night the Minister of Interior Security, Ben Gvir, drove at 1:30 in the morning with the heads of police to the town of Karmit in the Negev. The town of Karmit is very close to a Bedouin town called Lakia, and there was massive shooting from Lakia to the town of Karmit, and then during the people of the town, it's ongoing. There is all the time shooting, and it's something that is happening all over Israel. People are being terrorized. It's not just about the fact that it endangers their lives. It's about terrorizing them in a way that they simply don't want to live there. And then what we see is that the area of the Negev, that is supposed to be a strategic area that Israel, brings more and more Jews to this area, the contrary is happening. People are leaving the area, and the Bedouins are taking over the whole area. So we understand that there is a very serious problem. I get phone calls from all over Israel of people, afraid of shooting. It's not happening just in the Galil or the Negev or Judea and Samaria. We see it even in my town, in Caesarea, Zichron. Almost every Israeli city or town somehow is attached to an Arab town. So Tel Aviv has the Jaffa, with the big presence of Israeli Arabs and so on. So this connects, to the phenomena we have been seeing in the last few months. More and more drones, massive drones that are bringing weapons and machine guns, all machine guns, to Israel from the Egyptian border, from the Jordanian border. And we have to understand that this is not happening by chance. This is a strategic decision of Iran and other radical elements to concentrate now, at this stage of the war, almost all their efforts in weaponizing Palestinians and Israeli Arabs. In the Israeli Arab society, there is massive amount of weapons, hundreds of thousands, and more are coming. The ones who suffer the most, by the way, on everyday life are the Arabs themselves. There's a lot of shooting inside the Arab towns and people killed, murders. But we have seen terror attacks by Israeli Arabs, and when you talk to the leadership of the police and the specific units that deal with these issues, I had a chance to lecture to the leading unit in the police lately that is dealing specifically with Israeli Arabs, and they told me there is a huge deterioration and a lot of talk in the streets about attacking Jews. We have to understand that this global incitement, everything that's going on the global level, and the way everybody sees radical Muslims all over the world, and not only Muslim, going against Israel, this is also impacting inside Israel. And the army on the borders, we'll talk soon about what's going on in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, so on, but the army overall is very proactive. We are beyond the huge crisis we had at the beginning of the war, and the army is proactive in controlling the borders, operating daily, and is getting huge investments. But this is not the case with what's happening inside Israel. This is not the case with the police. The police is hardly managing to deal with everyday crime. I'm not talking about this kind of threats. But the police is overstressed, and so is the border patrol. And all this alert teams, 600 alert teams that have been built in Israel. So at the beginning, there was a lot of attention to them, and now not really. And this is something that we are dealing with in IDSF to really build an ecosystem that will sustain and build the oversight, command and control, the right equipment, and maintenance, and everything that will sustain these alert teams and get them ready, but also effective. So this is a huge, huge issue we're dealing with. We said it, Moshe, 2 years before the war. There will be a multi-front war, but also there will be a fight over the land of Israel. And now we're moving a stage. Many times it takes time. It's a natural thing for human beings to, you live in one reality and you get stuck with it, and to be able to change very fast, to understand that now things are changing, you have to move very fast from one reality to another reality. Usually it takes time. And our challenge as IDSF is really, really create a understanding that we're moving from almost the end of the multi-front war, which will deal with this also in the long term, but more sustaining what we managed to do and deepening the success, but it's not going to be a war. And moving towards a big, big challenge inside Israel, because our enemies haven't given up. They are changing the way they're fighting us. They thought that the best way to fight us is this ring of fire, rockets, missiles, drones, commando on our borders. We have dismantled this ring of fire to a very large extent. So they are adapting very, very fast, much faster than you would think, and simply moving towards weaponizing the Israeli Arabs and the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria to create an internal fight in all areas. And this fight has different kind of dimensions. Some of it is by extortion. They're extorting, businesses and stealing. And some of it is spoke lately to a woman that lives in one of the kibbutzim in the Galil. So she said, look, we're witnessing things we haven't never seen before. Suddenly, big groups of Arabs coming to the kibbutz. They supposedly they're not doing anything. And, it's supposedly not against the law that they'll walk in the kibbutz, but they do it in a threatening way, trying to say, guys, this is ours. We're going to take over this place. So this is how it starts. How it ends, we know how it ends. It ends by 40, 50 Arabs with weapons storming the kibbutz. This is how it's going to end. So we are moving fast towards this next stage, and we are not willing to have a reality that we are saying this is going to happen, and we're not ready for that, like we were on the 7th of October. We cannot have another 7th of October. And another 7th of October maybe cannot happen, at least at the moment, along the borders, because the IDF is controlling the borders and has degraded to a very large extent our enemies. It definitely can happen inside Israel. I remember when we did 3 times, we did a survey asking Israeli Arabs a question that they were never ever asked before. We asked them to be sincere and say, if an Arab country attacks us and invades, who are you going to fight with? And 25% said we're going to fight with the Arab army. 25% is 200, I would say 500,000 people. Represents 500,000 people. 500,000. 50% said we'll wait and see who wins, and then we decide what to do. And only 25% said we are allied with Israel. And by the way, within this 25%, we have members in IDSF. In IDSF, we also have Bedouin members and Arab members who decided to be part of Israel, and some of them serve in the army. I have very good friends that served with me in the army that are Bedouins. So definitely there is a part of the Israeli Arab society that has decided to really connect to Zionism and to Israelis, but there is a big part that are not really connected. And even if they are doing everyday jobs, even as doctors and in other positions, nationally speaking, if they have the chance, the moment is right, and things start, it's very hard to predict where this is going. And we cannot wait. We have to be proactive, both on the offense and on the defense. Now, on the offense, it cannot be citizens. In the offense, it needs to be the police, the border patrol, and the army. And we need to shift resources at the end of the war from the army to the police and the border patrol, and even army battalions that will help the police where is needed. But when it comes to defense, definitely we need to really strengthen the infrastructure of the alert teams in all towns, train them, equip them, create the command and control needed, get a higher alert, because if something happens, not the police and not the army will be there. It's going only to be the citizens. It will be completely depend on their capability. And by the way, it's no different from, I think, what we'll see in the coming decade in Jewish communities. There will be attacks where if the Jews are not weaponized and cannot defend themselves, the police might not be on time, and in some cases, the police might not even want to help. We have to be ready for these scenarios, both in Israel and outside in Israel. Now, for Americans, it's important to Canadians, it's important to understand. In Israel, you cannot go to a shop and buy a weapon. It doesn't work like that. Okay, Israel has very clear laws, and it's only pistols, and not anybody can get it, and it's only the alert teams that are allowed to have big weapons and not pistols. And this is why they become so crucial now. The Arabs, they have plenty of illegal weapons, big ones, including machine guns, but the alert teams are not built like that. Citizens don't have this. So this creates a very big challenge that is upon us, and we need to really, all of us, really shift fast from dealing with the army to dealing with these alert teams and the police and the border patrol, and everything that has to do with our internal security. This is the big thing that we need to get ready for. This is the next step. As we're dealing with that, we see Hamas starting to get more and more organized. We see in the last few days, every day, terrorists crossing the yellow line and trying to attack the IDF positions. This is extremely dangerous. They're planning to attack positions. They want to take soldiers as hostages. And we cannot sustain this for long without being proactive and on the offensive. When you play defense and the other team attacks, at one stage they are going to score. This is how it works. If you are only on defense and you are attacked continuously, there will be a moment when they score. We cannot afford this. And now the question is, how long are we going to wait until we say to the US, listen, this is not going anywhere. We're in stage 2. They are not disarming. They are not laying down. The weapons are getting stronger and stronger. And every day that we don't renew the offensive is another day that Hamas might endanger us, or they're getting more ready, and this will cost the lives of soldiers. So we need to move faster to the point where if Hamas is not disarmed, and they will not be disarmed by anybody, but the IDF, we have to move faster to the reality that the IDF renews the offensive. The chief of staff visited Gaza and the soldiers, and he talked about the plans of renewing the offensive, but it needs to happen much, much, much faster. If not, every day will make it more difficult, more challenging to deal with.
General, before you go on, can we go back to the first topic for a moment? I have a question there. In terms of the concern of another intifada in Israel, that the Arabs within Israel really in mass attack, is there a chance that that could happen by surprise without Israel knowing? Meaning Hamas was able to surprise Israel on October 7th because not just a bad philosophy that Israel had, but also an intelligence gap. Does that intelligence gap exist within Israel, within Judea and Samaria, that we could quite literally, out of the blue, have an intifada that the Arabs have been planning and we didn't know about it?
I think that we have seen in the last 2-3 years Israeli Arab terrorists conducting terror attacks, planned terror attacks, without the Shin Bet knowing about that. They were able to understand what happened only after the attack and not before the attack. And also, it might happen in a way that is spontaneous. It's enough that you have, one Friday, the muazzin in the mosque inciting. It's enough that something happens. I don't know. Maybe something in Gaza or anything that might get them, suddenly incited, and it happens instantly. And when so many people are holding weapons, the chances of seeing suddenly a spontaneous, group going with 10, 40 weapons to an Israeli town that is maybe 100, 200 meters from them, and simply storming the place. And if this happens, this might immediately arouse, attacks all over the place. So I think it's, like boiled pot that will anytime might spill, and it's very hard to predict exactly how it's going to happen and what will make it happen. We don't know. But I think that the overall feeling in the Israeli Arab society, at least the ones who are radicals, again, not all of them are like that. It's a portion, but it's a big portion. Is we had our opportunity on the 7th of October. We didn't, do what we need to do, and look what Israel is doing in Gaza and so on. And next time, we're not going to miss the opportunity. So there is a motivation, and as I said, they're also fed with all this delegitimation and accusations against Israel, and things are really getting out of control. And because Israel was so focused on these 7 fronts and everything that's going on around us, we didn't focus in the last 2 years really about the buildup that is going inside. And once also Iran and ISIS, Al Qaeda, all these groups are decided to focus more on what's going on inside Israel, this creates a very, very, very dangerous situation.
And do you think if Abu Mazen were to die or the PA were to become destabilized, would that increase the chances of Arabs attacking Jews, or would that increase Arab on Arab violence and we would be spared from that?
Might be a combination. Abu Mazen is 90 years old. He's sick. It's obvious that there will be a moment where he will go, and it's a big question what will happen afterwards. I'm sure there will be fighting among each other, but there is a tendency, when they fight each other, also to turn out the weapons to Israel and attack Israelis, whether in Judea and Samaria or along. I mean, when you look, for example, at the Green Line, you have huge Israeli cities, Kfar Saba, and so on along this line, Fula, Hedera, and for them to cross this line and go into a big city or a town. I've met, we were invited to meet several regional councils, heads of regional councils, people, some of them, by the way, politically speaking, are really on the left, but today they feel scared. They look at what happened on the 7th of October and they say to themselves, it can happen to us. It can come either from Judea and Samaria or from Israeli Arab cities that are very near their towns and cities, and they understand that. They understand that this is real. It's very, very dangerous. And you feel it everywhere. The Galil, the Negev, Judah and Samaria, and center of Israel. You can feel it in the air. And we need to get ready.
And I don't know if you mentioned this, but just to give us a sense, how many weapons approximate do you think are floating around the Arab world, either in Judea and Samaria or throughout Israel?
We're talking about hundreds of thousands. It's more than the IDF has. It's maybe as big as the IDF. Not as technological, not as advanced, not as organized, but it's a huge amount. It's a huge, huge amount.
Okay, let's switch topics if we can. Something else very important to discuss related to weapons, but not the weapons of our enemies, but rather the weapons, the munitions of Israel. Germany is going to resume exporting arms to Israel next week. That's in the headlines. What can you share with us about Israel's dependence right now on foreign arms and what Israel should be doing moving forward?
So Israel is decreasing its dependence steadily. And also there are very, very serious discussions about what will happen in 2028 when this aid from the US, the agreement will end. And Israel is moving steadily towards changing completely the relation with the US, stopping the aid altogether and shifting to a partnership, shifting to mutual projects, mutual investments in technology, something completely different because, by the way, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed this week. He said that when he started as Prime Minister long ago, he stopped the civil aid. And he said, now we're ready to stop also the military aid and have a different relationship that is based on mutual investments and not on aid. I think that overall, the US, for every dollar they invest, they get a huge return on investment, huge. But we would rather have a different kind of investment because, for example, when we get aid, it affects our industries. We have to buy in the US and not in Israeli industries. We cannot sign deals with other countries, and we want to be able to purchase from different countries to diversify our purchases and not be dependent on one country, even if it's the US. And the US has the motivation to change also the relationship and not base it on aid. So it's good for everybody. It's good for the US, it's good for us. And we need to deepen the relations, and we need to do a lot of things together. We need to really invest a lot in technology together, but not in the form of aid.
And what about non-governmental agencies? Elbit just made the news as a massive defense contractor that's a publicly traded company for a deal that they are making with a foreign company. What's the role of the Israeli defense establishment at large in this whole idea of no longer being dependent on foreign aid?
So, look, any investment you do in the Israeli military industries will make money for Israel. So when you invest in a certain line of production, they don't only produce for Israel, but they also export. Israeli military industries, 80% of their business is export, and it's growing dramatically, dramatically. They have signed in the last 2 years the biggest deals ever. And this is bringing a lot of money to the Israeli economy. So it's not spending money, it's investing money. And when you invest in Israeli industries, you gain two things. One, we're independent. They are producing weapons and everything we need, but also they are using these investments to export and sign deals. And because it's governmental industries, most of them, the money, what they earn after expenses, this money goes to the government. So this is very good investment, really taking care of our sovereignty. And by the way, when you have countries that are dependent on Israeli technology and capabilities, it obviously strengthens dramatically the relations between Israel and those countries. And you see it in Europe. With all the incitement and everything that's going on, there were many countries in Europe that remained pretty quiet and didn't behave like France or Britain or Spain. Why? Because they are doing huge business with Israel. And they are very dependent on Israeli capabilities in their preparations for a possible Russian attack.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And thank you, of course, for your leadership throughout this war. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to all of our supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.